got a very special guest. Could you do me a favor? Introduce yourself, G.
Yeah, no doubt. Name's Mark Ramirez, aka better known to the world as Krazy Race. LA hip hop MC.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's an honor to have Krazy Race today. He's had a long journey. Spanning what 3 different decades now, is it?
It's been a long time, bro. It's been a long time. Definitely been with me working on the greatest hits right now, which is 15 years of music or 6 different albums. Well, technically, I've been doing music for 20 plus years now.
Yeah, yeah. So fuck it. Yeah, I want to get a little bit into it. Get into that. Now, I know in previous interviews you talked about how your name was the name of your group at first, right?
Right.
And what was it that made you want to adopt it? Like, say, you know what? Like, even though the group disbanded, I'm running with this.
I was just, it was just one of those things where, obviously we individually, we all had like group names, excuse me, hip hop, MC names and whatnot. But with me, just the name always stuck, and it was just something where, growing up on the guys in the streets, I had my, you get a hood name and then you get your street name and rap name. And a lot of people just knew me as Marky Boy growing up.
Yeah.
My first name being Mark, they used to call me Marky Boy, Marky Boy. So even when Krazy Race first officially started, it was Marky Boy, and then it went to MCR or just MCR, which are my initials.
Yeah.
But with Krazy Race, it was just one of those things that I want to say around 97 when I came back. Actually, 95 when I took off to Atlanta, went to escuela for a bit, went to college to a trade school that did like recording and engineering and whatnot. It was at that point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick with the name. I'm going to run with it. And I'm just going to do it. And luckily with the crew that I had at the time, pretty much had everybody's blessing. And, I took the name, ran plural. Everybody would see me on stage. And even when I did shows, after that, there was always, because I was featuring different MCs and some of the homies from the crew. So for a good period of time, there was still people around me that were official Krazy Race members, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It was really, I would say, after when I officially dropped the first album in 2004, from like that point on, until now, really, I've pretty much ran with the name and haven't looked back,
Oh yeah. So let's take it back a little bit now that we know like the where Krazy Race started. Let's go back a little bit further.
Yeah.
Before Krazy Race was birthed. Do you know what I mean? Like how you were known as Marky Boy? You said on the streets. Where how involved were you with like street life and shit like that? And how much of an influence did that have on your?
Yeah, I was, I'm raised right here in the city of Whittier, Southeast LA. Familia wise, I got family that were raised, right there in Old Pico, and my grandmother was right there in Northside Bowling. So, my grandfather was right there in White Fence. So, definitely the street life, definitely played a part in my life. You know what I'm saying? I myself was in the hood. I can't say I'm too active with that or have been active with that for many years. But and in high school, man, it was, I'm a product of environment of my environment in the early 90s around here in the late 80s. Shit was popping. It was active,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we lost a lot of good ones, lost a lot of good homies. And I remember, just going through high school and just, losing camaradas left and right, and just people that we knew, from basically the gang violence and other things, drug related or whatnot. But the streets definitely, played a part in my life growing up. Being raised, I would say we're lower middle class, that's one thing with the city of Whittier, like, and just other Southeast heads and even SGV, like, you can live in a house, and doesn't matter, because right when you exit those doors, like, shit could pop off any given moment, So I remember a lot of heads would be like, "Oh, you live in," that's you're in the suburbs, homie. Like, and you're right, I am in the suburbs, but if you're in LA and you're in LA County, pretty much shit cracks everywhere around here,
Yeah. And what I wanted to ask is because I listen to a lot of your music, and a lot of the stuff you do, and I know at a young age, I don't know if you had that much schooling from the beginning, but how were the early stages of your rap? Or were you talking about a lot of the political stuff you're talking now mixed with the street stuff, or was it mainly just street stuff back then?
Now, you know what? I think with when I first got into, you know what I mean, hip hop, I said this many times before, but I like to give them their proper due. Like KDAY really played a huge impact and a huge part with what I was listening to. You know what I'm saying? Like the OG Tony G, you know what I mean? And just the mix masters for breaking those records and, you know, playing the first Como D's and the LL Cool J's and, you know, Kid Frost and Ice-T and just all those old school early records. So, of course, you know, the boom bap and the hip hop side took a part of me, but, you know, the street side did too, you know what I mean, with later years following with NWA and whatnot. But I think with me as an MC, when I first started, like even with like LL Cool J, even hearing like I Need Love, you know what I mean? You kind of want to you kind of want to replicate that. So maybe at the time, you know what I mean? Maybe one of my first highness, my first girlfriends, like maybe I wrote a love rap, you know what I mean? Then I heard, you know, Kid Frost Rough Cuts or Ice-T 6 in the morning, and then I wanted to do something like that. So between the, you know what I mean, between the streets and BAP and just life, like it all played pretty much a major factor of me, what I was writing. And then plus, you know, growing up, I was raised around a lot of music. You know what I mean? My parents, you know, they like to party, you know, and get their Volo on with my Nino and Nina, who lived across the street at the time. So, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, doors open, they're bumping rolas, they're bumping oldies, you know what I mean? And two-stepping in the living room and, you know, drinking and pisteando and the whole nine. So this is kind of what I was raised like. This was almost like an every other weekend affair, you know? Yeah. And just being around that, everything just kind of like, you know what I mean? I don't want to say just I gravitated towards it, but hip hop was in its infancy and it was an early stage. So like, I just felt like I could rap about anything. I just felt like, let me try this, let me try that, and really see what sticks, you know?
Yeah. So I know you said like there was a lot of partying going on, a lot, you know, you had the street life going on. What was it that made you pack up your bags, go to Atlanta, and pursue this like as a career?
Well, I think that at that point was really, you know what I mean? And I've seen some of your interviews, bro, and I commend you for what you're doing. You really put out some dope content.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things was for me at that period of my life, you know, my pops used to tell me like, hey, son, you know, because like I said, he was raised in Old Pico. You know, he's an old school dude, and he was just like very hardworking man. But he was like, your world is this big, you know?
Yeah.
Like just based off who you're hanging around with, you know what I mean? You're starting to get in trouble. You're, you know what I mean? Right here, you know what I mean? Doing like, you know, getting picked up at, you know what I mean, Whittier PD or, you know, just doing little stupid shit here and there. Was already affiliated at the time, you know, going through high school. And it was really one of those things where I was like 21, 22 years old. And I was like, you know what, maybe it's time for a change. And so my outlet at the time was, you know what, I could stick around here and try to do something, or I can get away. And I had the opportunity because at that time, my jefe had got a jale, one of the locations for his business was near Atlanta, which is about 45 miles north of Atlanta in a city called Lawrenceville. So he was already out there. Me and my jefe were still out here in Whittier at the pad. And he was like, hey, looking at some colleges out here, you know what I mean? Georgia Tech, you know, University of Georgia, like, you know what I mean? Trade schools, whatever. And I looked into Tech, Georgia Tech, and then I looked into an art school at the time. It was called Art Institute of Atlanta, which they now have Art Institute of Los Angeles, like the recording workshop, and they had a recording program. So it was really that, at that point, I was like, you know what? I just made a decision to say, you know what? It's time for me to, you know what I mean, to just to step out the realm and try to do better for myself, man. And, you know, put a little 4-year degree under my belt and see where this music takes me, see if it's something that I even want to commit to. You know, my initial plan was to go out there, learn recording engineering, and really come back and record and mix and work in big facilities. You know what I mean? Like the $1 million facilities like Westlake and Can-Am and some of the big recording studios. And that was the plan. You know what I mean? I graduated with honors, came back like 2.5 years later, went to school out there in 95, came back like late 97. And then the plan changed. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I came back, went to do it. I was already interning out there. I'd interned at, believe it or not, So Def Records with Little John.
Oh, hell yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
so and then I interned at Dark Studios, which was Dallas Austin's spot. You know what I mean? So I saw a lot of heavy hitters and artists coming through, like George Clinton. They were recording out there. I saw Goody Mob and Outkast and just a lot. You know what I mean? A lot of the heavy hitters from the South that were making some real hip hop out there.
Yeah,
I was around this scene for the 2 years I was out there. So when I came home, the recording and all that kind of went out the window because I went to intern at a spot here in LA, and they're like, I went to get a job, and they were like, oh, you need to start over again. You need to intern. I'm like, I've already done this. I've already paid my dues. Like, nah, you got to intern here. I'm like, you know what? I love it. So I scratched that, went and picked up, a little part-time holla and just went full-time music. Launched my company at the time, which was MCR Productions, just my initials, and just started like my own independent production company and my first kind of like record label that was gonna put out my own music, and that was it, man. Went from there.
Dope. And while you were in Atlanta, how was there like a culture shock? Because I know, like you said, your world was smaller. You know what I mean? Like.
Oh yeah.
SGV.
Yeah.
How was it when you stepped outside and went to Atlanta, start working with like Little John, Goody Mob, and Outkast? Like,
well, I can't say I worked with them, but I did work, for him because I was an intern at the spot. But yeah, no, it definitely was a culture shock. You're going to a place where you're pretty much the majority, even though we still feel like a minority. But when I went out there, it was pretty much it was black and white. That's just what that's what the South is, and a lot of the people I met, from out there were coming in from New York. Because it was an art school, so you got people from New York, from Chi-Town, from Florida, right there, the hometown, Naptown from Indiana. It was a lot of like Southern Midwest. So besides me, when I was out there, I think there was, trying to remember, my man Earl, who was a Crip. He was from, he was from LA. He was out there going to school with me. And then, and there was another homeboy, I can't remember his name off top right now. Another black cat that was from Long Beach, and we were like the first, we were like the three West Coast heads really in the whole school.
Yeah.
So Atlanta was dope, but I'll tell you this, the one thing I did learn is, the people, the culture, everything's a lot slower, brother. Like we're not New York by any means, but LA is just like, like what, 3 second rule in effect. What are you looking at? Like,
yeah.
So when I went out there, it was like, there was definitely, I just felt like, man, I could, I could be myself. No, don't get it twisted, because like when you go out on the weekends, Georgia had gangs too,
Yeah.
And you'd bump into fools, and I remember just going out and partying on the weekends, and I would bump into homeboys like just straight up essays from Anaheim and from Cypress Park and other vadios that were out there. I was like, wow, if there's other heads kind of doing the same thing I am, kind of getting away, or like maybe the head father, the mom and dad, or the family member, hey, you got to smash, leave town, or maybe they're on the run, who knows? But I bumped into some Southsiders while I was out there as well,
That's
and
true.
Georgia definitely had their own hoods, and Mexican communities. Like Lawrenceville was a pretty good sized Mexican community. Doraville was a big Mexican community as well. So, but nah, man, the South definitely was a culture shock. But like I said, good people, met some solid ones out there. Definitely soaked up the experience for what it was for the short amount of time I was out there, and pretty much used it to my advantage. So when I came home, I soaked up a lot of game out there in the music industry. So when I came back out here, I was like, it's go time, But like I said, man, I met some real ones that to this day I'm still in contact with, and the South got some good people.
So you get back, you start your record company, and you have the advantage of, like you said, soaking up the game out there, knowing the boards, knowing how to mix and master. How was it putting out your first record? Was it easier than you thought it'd be, or was it a little bit more difficult than you thought it'd be?
Nah, well, the first one was technically an EP. Because I came back, like I said, in '97. 2 years later, I put out The Time Has Come, which was really a demo, homie. Like, it was a demo. Like, looking back at it now, reflecting on the way the business works, like, I should have never put it out. Because I invested, like, with me and Pops, he was my silent investor at the time. Like, it was like $1,700 back then just to press up 1,000 CDs. That's not even including the recording time, the studio time. Luckily, 2 of the songs that I put on it were done in Atlanta.
Yeah.
When I was going to the school. So one of them was done inside the actual recording studio where I went to school for all this shit. And then one was done with another producer out there. And then 2 songs were done, believe it or not, up in the Bay Area. That was the beauty of interning at So Def was A&R, Little John, who was, who we know as a rapper, that are known for as a producer or whatnot. He was actually the A&R. So he was the one that was finding talent for Jermaine Dupri at the time. And I was his intern. So a lot of the cassettes and the demos, CDs that came in, a lot of cassettes, wasn't even CDs then. A lot of cassettes that came in, they came to me first. I would listen to them, and if I thought they were dope, besides when he was listening to them, I'd pass it on to him, and he would give it a bump. Well, 90% of that shit didn't even get past me. So the few that were dope and that were talented, that I felt, I would pass it on, and he'd be like, this ain't So Def. So I would keep it. So when I came home, I had like 3 or 4 contacts of producers that had crossed the table at So Def, and one of them was a cat out of the Bay Area named Nate Fox, who had done shit with a lot of Bay legends, including Tupac. So the other 2 songs on that 4-song EP were 2 of his beats. But when I get back to what I was saying is I shouldn't have put it out just because, like I said, it really was a demo. It was only 4 songs. You know what I mean? Like I invested a lot of money, a lot of time into it, put it out. But that was 1999. 2 years later, I put that out under MCR Productions, and it was called The Time Has Come.
Oh yeah. And so you put out your first one, and you said 99. The official one, you said 2 years later. Now 2 years after 99, things are starting to change. Like you said, there were cassettes before. How did you adapt to that? Like there's not even really CDs at that point. There's a few CDs, but it's like a digital stream is coming. And how did you deal with that?
Well, I think it came more later. So in 99 is when I put out The Time Has Come, my first full-length album, which still all my releases to date have all been pretty much released on CD. I haven't done vinyl up until right now. I'm about to do my first vinyl, 6 albums later, in an EP. But the first album dropped in 2004. So I want to say around then, 2002, 2003, that's when we started getting MP3.com. The MP3s were popping. Streaming started to go. But really, at that point, I think CDs were still the official medium. Like cassettes pretty much had already died. For those that were DJs, of course, vinyl was still in. For the hip-hop DJs and the soul collectors, they were still on the vinyl, but it wasn't like the way it is again right now. You know what I'm saying? But I always, at least with my releases, I've always put them out on CD. I don't know if that answers your question. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, dope. Yeah, sure. And so you're putting out projects. Is it becoming more expensive to produce the projects, or as the technology advances, are you taking advantage of it? It's becoming less expensive and a lot more accessible.
No, luckily, I think at that time, you know me, because when you first get into the game, like you only have your connections with who you have. Like you don't have a real solid network yet. So I think as I continue to put out releases, I was building a bigger network of just gente that, whether they were doing music videos or other engineers or other producers or MCs or, manufacturing plants. So I think by the time I put out the New World Games album, which was my first official album in 2004, between that and the second album, which was the Movement, Strength, and Numbers in 2006, by that time I'd already found a plug to, now I can get 1,000 CDs for like $500-$600 cheaper. You know what I'm saying? So it was already a bigger difference of what I was paying. And then by that time, when it came to studio time, the majority of my records I was recording in-house. Besides that, like I would use a couple other studios. One of them being the ringleader DJ Ace, Rhyme Poetic Mafia. You know what I'm saying? Who's one of my longtime producers and good homies. I would use his spot called the Dark Kingdom. Had another spot, in Montebello. Then later, I was using like the Hennessy Lounge with Kiki and them. But I would say initially out the gate, it was really my home base studio, which we called the Lab at the time, and my boy Ace's lab, and then one spot in Montebello that we use every now and then.
Dope. And
actually, East LA too, because I did some shit early on with on my first album with what's his name with Dave Salas. So a lot of heads know who Dave Salas is. He has a studio right there in East LA, and that was with my bud, with one of my homeboys named Rob. So, but yeah, a lot of stuff was done in house, man. You know what I mean? That's the one thing when I went to school for it, I was like, even though it's a trip to say, because I went to Escuela for the big boards, you know what I mean, the SSLs and the 2-inch tape, and that's something that needs to be brought up, because remember, I went to school with splicing tape, actual 2-inch tape, and that's how we would do our edits. By the time I left school, it was pretty much Pro Tools was already the thing, so now everything was kind of going to digital and in the computer side of things. So it was kind of almost obsolete unless you were going to be working in a recording facility that, that was pretty much $1 million facility,
Being that you had that knowledge though from the school, was it easy for you to pick up Pro Tools, or was it still like, oh shit, a whole nother world because it's digital?
No, I still had to learn it. Like we had a little bit of on the digital side of, from going to school. I want to say at that time we were doing shit, but it was like, we're talking 97. It was like Pro Tools 1, Pro Tools 2. I don't even remember what version it was. And then like they had Logic, but it was early. Like, so even the software was still kind of chunky. You know what I mean? It wasn't like anything like what it is now. Like, and even though Pro Tools is a standard, like later in my career, I've always went against the grain. I'm a lefty, homie. So I've always been one that's like, everybody uses this, I'm going to use this. So I've been, throughout my career, like when I record a mix, in the early stages, I was using Cubase. So everybody was using Pro Tools. I was using Cubase. Now everybody's still using Pro Tools. Nuendo. I use a program called Studio One by Presonus.
All right. And one thing I tripped out on when I used to see your videos back in the like mid 2000s is how much you were traveling. You know what I mean? And I was like, whoa, like you said, what's crazy because you said earlier your pops told you the world's a lot bigger.
Oh yeah.
And then you got to really see that, because I seen pictures, videos of you in Spain. I think I remember Spain and a few other countries in Europe. How was that like the first time you got a gig out there? Did you have to book it, or did they book you and fly you out there?
No, we got booked, and I got to shout out a website at the time and my boy Sal Rojas. The first time we went international with me and my hype man MVP, my brother Gabriel, it was booked through a magazine called Zona de Obras, and it's really dope zine. Don't know if it's still around, but what was really dope about the zine, and I'll get back to the story, was what they would do is they would feature, like, they're primarily kind of a rock zine, but with every magazine, they would give you a compilation CD with all the artists they were kind of featuring in that magazine.
Yeah.
So I thought that was brilliant. I'm like, that shit's dope. You know what I mean? Like, who does that? So what they did, this is like 2004, I want to say, maybe 03. They did a Chicano hip hop one, and it featured like, Psycho Realm, Delinquent Habits, myself, and Aslan Underground, and a bunch of other heads, and they put it out. Well, what I found out was the heads from the city that was in España was called Zaragoza, and it was kind of, northern Spain from what I remember. Well, the heads gravitated towards my music, and they liked it a lot. So they were doing this festival. This is a legitimate festival called Zaragoza Ciudad, and it was sponsored by the city. The mayor would come out, like, they'd get big sponsors like Heineken, and it was a legit fest. And what happened was they were bringing out Sal Rojas from brownpride.com, the website, because of his photography.
Yeah.
So they were flying him out to do like an LA Chicano type exhibit of his photography in Spain. And at that time they said, oh, do you have contacts with Krazy Race? And then he reached out, we did the logistics, and as far as, what the pay was going to be, and man, they flew us out. How was that? That was in, I want to say 05, 2005, we went out there, and I want to say it was late June, and then we came back early July. The reason why my hype man, or my homie, will always bring it up every year is 15 years ago, really, because we're in 2020, right? 15 years ago to the date almost, because when we were flying home from Spain, it was 4th of July, so the whole all the U.S., bro, was fucking going active, and all we just saw was fireworks under the airplane. That shit looked dope. Let me tell you, like, it was just, you're just looking down and just, like, you know what I mean? Seeing all the illegals going off, man. But it was dope. I mean, it was real dope. We got to, you know, I got to build with a lot of people out there. I think the only other heads from Cali was Peanut Butter Wolf, who was like a DJ, and then Metaphor from Oxnard, who was from a group called the Loop Pack. And we got to do a show out there. It was a 2-day festival. We got to rock with Scratch from the Roots. We got to rock with the Beat Nuts, MOP, Mash Out Posse. Like, so it was a real dope, as well as really dope underground hip hop groups from Spain, like Villa Lotus del Verso and Hayes and other groups. So you know, shout out to España, man, for Zona de Obras for taking us out there. We rocked that shit, and it was around, I want to say, a good 8,000 to 10,000 people in that crowd.
Damn, was that your first time rocking a crowd that large?
I don't know, because we had done some car show shit too, and you get some big crowds. But I think with that type of energy, definitely. Yeah.
So let me try to put yourself back into like that back in those days. How did you feel being on that airplane, ready to go for a paid gig to do like such a big event? Where it like, you know, a kid from, like you said, a kid from Whittier.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It was humbling. It was you know, it was gratifying. It was just off the fucking hook. Like, you don't, when you get into this business and you do hip hop, you know, the majority of what I've done it for is obviously for the love. You know what I mean? Of course, you want to leave a legacy. You want to leave a name for yourself. You want to be known to where the guy is like, oh, hey, have you heard so and so? But really, at that point, it was just like, man, this shit's finally paid off. Like, I said I was gonna, you know, go to Atlanta in '95, and technically 10 years later, I'm going international. And you know what I mean? And these people, it's not even my own city that's putting me on. It's a country thousands and thousands of miles away. So it was definitely humbling and a really dope and gratifying experience, man. Yeah, and I'll tell you this, and I've said this in interviews, man, that the European hip hop culture, Spain, you know, Germany, like Amsterdam, like they go off, homie. Like, yeah, they really truly respect the culture and the craft, and they know the difference of whack shit and what's dope shit. So it was just dope to see. Like, and my hype man could even tell you, like, what was really super dope and like beyond like the measure of like just being like, wow, we couldn't believe it was, you know, we took. I'm gonna go off tangent real quick, but when we first got there, we were warned, homie, like kind of the same way like we got LA in the hoods, right? We were warned, like, hey, when you get to Spain, trucha, because there's a lot of gypsies, they'll jack your shit. Yeah. And real slick about it. Well, sure enough, we're there for like maybe fucking, you know what I mean? We land, I think we're in it was either Madrid or Barcelona, and we were trying to get a bus to go to Zaragoza where the festival was. And we left, it was me and I think my homeboy Sal Rojas' brother, and then I think MVP and Sal Rojas went to go get our tickets. Me and the homeboy were right there with our luggage, bro, right there. We must have turned around to talk for a little bit. By that time, one of our suitcases was already snapped, gone. Okay. And that one was my homeboy's toiletries and one of our boxes of CDs. Damn. So out the gate, I already lost 30 CDs of product like that I was trying to sell at the festival. Well, to fast forward to the festival, what was really dope, what I was bringing up was there was a lot of booths of, you know what I mean, of people selling their shit. And no lie, dog, all we had was, I think, 1 or 2 shirts, like a real cheesy design, like it said Krazy Race real little. It was like one of my first shirts. Like, it wasn't even done right, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think we had one other box of CDs and a couple other things that I took out there. And we ran through all that shit. I think we were like one of the only, because I had a suitcase full of shirts. We sold everything. Like, and I was looking around and people were like, weren't moving shit. But I think what it was, like, I think the smart thing from a marketing standpoint that I did is, remember those little fold-up DVD players? Yeah. Right, you put the DVD in and just like shows the movie, like we travel with them. Yeah. I took one of those, and what I did is I took the City of Angels video, which was released at the time, and I think one other video, and I just had it repeating. So they'd come up and they would see the, the LA fingers and all that. And you know what I mean? And then they'd be like, oh, besides them seeing us perform, it was just like, boom. It was dope. You know what I mean? Like I said, like we sold out of all our shit. So I didn't expect that either. So it was dope, the support that we got when we were out there.
Now, like when it comes to your show, like show wise, right? Did you learn anything from rocking a crowd that large? Like from that, like you said, that energy was different, like than any other energy you had before. Did you learn anything from that? Like were you like, okay, you picked up a few things along the way, or was it that was that already in you at the time?
No, because we you know what I mean. Typically, a lot of the shows I was rocking today was really like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and remind you, I only had the EP I put out in '99. And then the full-length album that I dropped in 2004. So this is a year later, right?
Yeah.
That I put out. So all I had was those old songs I really wasn't doing. I wasn't performing those joints. Like I said, to me, those were demo joints. So we had the whole album. So it was like, all right, let's pick the best ones. And so I think in Spain, I want to say we rocked a 40 or 45-minute set. I know at the end of the set, the CD itself, because the shit was bumping, the CD itself started jumping inside their player in the middle of the arena. So I want to say like one or two songs at the end got cut from our actual set, but I still think we rocked a solid 40 minutes. To answer your question though, I just think we did a lot of rehearsal. We went in for that one just knowing like how big of a show this was, to not only get through it, but to be able to stay polished for 45 minutes. You feel me? Like, and there's one thing, like in España, when we went out there, the people that took care of us and the other MCs, prior to the first night of us rocking, we got together with like the heavy hitters from Spain, the groups that were from that town. And one of them was called, I mentioned them earlier, Violadores del Verso. And there was a couple other groups. And then like the organizers, probably, I want to say maybe a table of like 15 of us, something like that. And we're at a nice restaurant. And they're doing like red wine and Coke. Like I forget what it's called when they do it. Like that's just like a tradition for them. Yeah. We're all toasting and shit. And my hype man's like, hey homie, like where's all the yerba at? Like, you know what I mean? Like what's up with the weed? Like, and no lie, homeboy goes like this, and we of course we're asking the one dude that's all full of dreadlocks. You know what I mean? Like he's from I want to say he's from España, call him Hayes, but or he's from another country right by Spain. But we're like, what's up with the weed? And he just goes like this and just pulls out a brick, bro. Bah! It was like brick weed, like dirt weed, but pulled it right on the table. Bah! We're like, we're at a nice ass restaurant, like a 5-star. We're like, what the fuck? So anyway, before the show, just to kind of ease the tension, you know what I mean? Like, and get the butterflies out, we're like, hey, we had already rolled one. We're backstage. We got like sandwiches or whatever was on our contract rider, you know what I mean? Sodas and whatnot, beers. And we're back there. We're like, hey, should we blaze it? And we blaze. And this is like 10 minutes before we go on.
Yeah.
So as I'm walking down the hallway, now I'm like, fuck, homie, I'm high. Like really high. Like this is not good. Like all my songs, everything that we prepared for, like kind of for that walk down the aisle like a UFC fighter, for that fucking 2 minutes of walking, I was nervous, dog. Like, so I think the first opening couple, you know what I mean, bars and shit, and we just, by the time we shook it off, and you can see in the video clip, even though I've only put up like 5 minutes, like a 40-minute clip.
Yeah.
I started out with, a shirt on, a slingshot, headband around my head, wristbands. By the time you saw that shit, I took the shirt off, threw it to the crowd, took my headband off, threw it to the crowd, took the wristband, and I was just out there rocking with slingshots and the sweats for like 40 minutes, bro.
Hey, how were they reacting to you throwing away? Were they going wild off of that shit?
They loved it. You know what I mean? Like, the like I said, the energy out there was electric, man. Like, and I think the songs the ones that they would gravitate towards, once we would get them into it, you know what I mean, and pick them up, then it would just be like, it was just, even like in that little clip, when I did the hip hop chant, you hear them chanting back with us, and that's like 7,000-8,000 strong rocking,
Oh yeah. So you get back to the U.S. You're releasing music in was it at that point you started working with a lot, because you worked with a lot of, you know, well-established artists. Was it at that point that you started, or did it take a little longer after that? By the second?
I would say really 2000, like I said, 2004 was Noodle Games, the first album that took me to Spain. In 06, I dropped The Movement, and I think at that point I was working with a really dope body of roots band, which is Quinto Sol, not Quinto Sol from Milwaukee, but the ones from East Los. So I was working with them at the time, and then Global City from Pico Union, and then that was 2006. And who else did I work with for that album? I want to say 2Mex, Jism High Definition. But I think it really was the 09 album, bro, when I did the Chronicles album, which was 2009, Chronicles of a Krazy Race. I would say between 2006, 2009 is when I started, kind of building a solid relationships with other MCs. And 2009 is when I rocked the Chronicles album, completely produced by the ringleader DJ Ace, who I mentioned earlier. Dope fucking producer. Me and him got our chemistry is just crazy. And, when we make music and shit. And that's when I started working. That's when I did the record with Jack. Chino XL was on that album. Eric Bobo, Cam, Immortal Technique did a drop for it. Like, so that album was probably the solidified one that was like, I'm here, homies. Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It's official. Like, not to say that I wasn't already spitting, but at that point, I would say that's really, it was 09, about 10, 11 years ago, when others started to take notice.
Oh yeah, and not to put too much out there of how you did it, but like, what advice could you give to, let's say, youngsters trying to come up to like go toward the path like that, where they could work with all kinds of different artists and have them coming to you for your album? You know what I mean? Like how? What kind of advice could you give?
I would say, hone your skills, perfect your craft, man. Do this shit for the love first. Like, obviously we're in a different era. Like, what I mean by that is, in all reality, like, your laptop, shit, not only your laptop, like your cell phone, you could pretty much make a song here now. Like, we didn't really have that. We didn't have that access. Like, we really had to go into a recording studio, like, and I'll come back to it, but like, I started off on like on a sing-along machine, you feel me? Like, and then it went to a boombox with dual cassette. Then it went to a 4-track, to an 8-track, to ADAT. You know what I mean? To 2-inch tape, and then it went to digital. So now you guys are already there. Like, so it's definitely easier. Obviously, the game's a lot more flooded, so you have to stand out. So either you do that through marketing, and either invest on the marketing side and get a really solid team behind you. Or really, my recommendation would be keep putting the work in, do it for the love first, and as you're progressing, as you're growing as an artist, believe it or not, man, like, we're MCs. It's a competitive nature. It's a competitive sport. But at the same time, like, I still got my fillers out there for who's dope, period. Because if somebody's fucking dope, I acknowledge it. You know what I mean? If the shit's whack, I acknowledge that too. But it's not like to say that they're whack and they can't get better, because we all started from somewhere. Yeah. You feel what I'm saying? So if anything, don't just think because you put out a record on SoundCloud and, man, that song gets 3,000 plays and you feel it's popping, or your YouTube, you put it on a channel where, because you paid to get it up there and now it's popping, and all of a sudden you can go to somebody and they're just going to want to jump on your record. It's not going to the way it works. More likely, some of these heads are going to be like, break bread, as I would, because at the end of the day, I've paid my dues, man. And I'm saying, this is my 9 to 5. I do have a couple other side businesses, but the music's pretty much been my gig, for a long time. So best advice, man, is just keep at it. Keep at it. Stay dedicated. Stay passionate. Don't let no one tell you that you can't do it either. You're going to have family. They're going to be naysayers. You're going to have your own friends that are going to be yes men and no men. Like, just do you, and the rest should really fall into place.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say this shit isn't cut out for everybody.
Yeah.
The music game's rough, man. Brother, you know what I'm saying? I know you do music too. Like, this shit is not cut out for everybody. You got to have thick skin, and you got to just stay on it.
Yeah. And so Chronicles of a Krazy Race, that was a 2-part series, right?
That was just it was one album, but it was just called it was one album that we put out in 2009.
Okay.
The one you may be thinking of, the album that followed that was called The Rapture. That album I worked with Frost, Rocka from Dilated Peoples, family right there. Bamboo de la Pistola, you know what I mean? Good Pinoy Brothers out there, you know what I mean, doing it, and others. But that was 2011, and then in 2012, I put out, which was kind of a first or one of a kind, was I did an album called The International Project, which had 25 songs, and all the production, 100% of the production was from producers all around the world. I had 15 different countries represented on that album by producers.
That's dope.
And you know what's crazy?
It sounds like by that point you're definitely taking advantage of digital. You know, because that's something. How expensive would that have been in 2002?
I wouldn't have done it. I don't think 25 songs. Like, you figure back then, like, I'm talking like the cheapest, not a project studio or a home studio like the one I'm in now, but like a legitimate facility. You were like, what are you talking? You're talking, 70 to 130 an hour. Damn. Or you'd be blocking it out by the rate, like, $400 to $800 a day or something like that. So you'd have to go in there and basically, knock out two, 3 records every time you were there, So
yeah,
really, I've been on digital shit really since I would say probably since the 2000s, really. 2004 when I put out my first album. By that point on, we were already rocking digital heavy. I think every song after that, maybe one I've put on tape. The rest have been either on ADATs, which was the 8-track digital, the ADATs, or just straight to Pro Tools, Nuendo, or some digital audio workstation, a DAW.
And at what point did MCR become Realism Records?
2007.
What made you switch over to that?
Just because really what it was is I wanted to, MCR Productions was just really kind of like my home base for me. Mm-hmm. And then Realism was basically me stepping out and saying, you know what, I'm going to start looking at other talent, other MCs, other people that I want to work with. And then that's when we formulated that. I want to say June, July of 2007.
And how long after did the because I remember you had a show too on, was it Wednesdays, if I remember correctly?
Thursdays. Yeah, Thursdays. We did the Relevance shit only because it's been a solid year since I haven't done it. Yeah. And that was just, kind of pre-quarantine. Way before that, it was like last October, November was our last show. Or was it last year or the year before that? It's been a minute. It's been a solid minute. But we're doing the Relevance Radio, which basically started out of my studio that was in the pad at the time. And that was just something, another one of those things, man. Like, I've always, like, that's kind of with me. I've always been one that said, you know what, how can I shine some light on other gente that I think are dope? And the one thing with the Relevance is, not to say that, I didn't have, some black brothers and sisters on there, but it was, it was primarily, us, bro. It was Latino, it was Raza, it was Chicanos, and just spitters, and not to say that it was all like Chicano rap based, but the majority of my people were doing some rap shit, some hip hop, and it was just people that I was a fan of or who I thought were dope. That's who I would bring on the show. We did it bi-weekly. I want to say we did about 3 years here at my pad, and then I merged with the B-side, and then we did like another 3 years, with 3 to 3.5 years with them as well. And I still get, to this day, I'm still asked, when am I going to bring it back? Yeah. If it's going to be a podcast, if it's going to be something like this, Like, I don't know, man. I've been kind of enjoying the downtime, with B-side. They still have me coming out to co-host, every now and then. So, like, it still feels like I'm still doing it anyway, even though I'm not. Yeah. My shit was really an underground type show, but big ups to the B-side show for holding us down and allowing us to be able to use their platform and and do the Relevance out of there. We had some good interviews. We had some crazy interviews on there. Had some debatable interviews on there. But it was a good time when we did it. We did that for
And for people that don't know what it was, like they're missing out because it was real dope. You know what I mean? Basically, just so people don't know what it was is Krazy Race would chop it up, and then he would play tracks like you could hear those shit, good quality too. I don't even know how he did that on the trip. Yeah, but you'd play good quality tracks, and then fucking you'd come back, talk about it, chop it up with some of the artists. Then I remember even for a while you had a live stream going. Like it was just a trip. Like it was just a pretty crazy. I think it was ahead of its time, if you ask me.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, I really wanted when we first. It's funny because when we first started, and the people that used to come to because the show was basically out of my pad. It was in my where my son sleeps now. You know what I mean? Where my teenager's room. That was the original MCR recording studio, or what we called the lab back then. And people would come in and they would see it on cam. But what it was is I would have the webcam would be in the corner, so the room looked kind of like almost like fisheye, right?
Yeah.
So the room looked bigger. So when you got in there, like it was like as big as what this is now. And this is like my recording studio now is basically 2 tough sheds put together. It's like a 12x16. My room was like the studio in there was small. But I think what was really dope about it, it was no frills, no bells, no whistle. It was just raw, bro. When we first started off, we didn't even have a DJ. It was just raw cut, drinking, blazing, us in that environment, just shooting the shit like me and you are right now, but we're right here, we're in person together. They would be like, hey, how can I play my music? I'm like, homie, I could play it by phone, by USB drive. I could play it by your SoundCloud, by iTunes, a CD, like all formats we could pretty much play. So like there'll sometimes be like, oh, I forgot the USB drive. Well, you got SoundCloud? Yeah, let's go off SoundCloud. And luckily the way I had the show running, we'd still be able to go. And I think that's what really initially what caught on was like people were like, yo, like this, it's just raw. Like we didn't do no radio drops. There was nothing magical with transitions, none of that shit. You know what I mean? Like, and then as the show went on, we merged with B-Side. And then at that point, we would start to do the same things we were doing here, but now we incorporated music videos and even like live performances from our groups and artists and DJs that would come through and and get their guest appearance on. So it's dope. You can still catch. The unfortunate part is the first few years of those episodes I fucked up. That's my bad because the format I was using Stickcam at the time, and the format was some weird file and I could never find a converter for it. By the time I did, Stickcam had already disappeared off the map. So all those original content, all the interviews, those are gone. But I would say the interviews, not all of them, I still have a few, but I would say the interviews with the B-side, there's probably about 60, I would say 60%, 70% of those interviews you can still catch. You just got to go to B-side channel on YouTube, and then you'll see that the show, they're organized by the different shows. Look for the relevance, and you'll be able to see some of those interviews still on there.
Were there any interviews that tripped you out? Like, what the fuck's this guy on? Or were they memorable to you? Like, maybe even like just really dope or really strange, awkward?
Yeah, no, there was, it was all of the above. You know what I mean? Like, there's just interview, there's, not even putting, I'm not going to, name names and shit, but,
yeah,
like, some people, like you said, bro, or some people are just like, even though like from a hip hop standpoint or an artistry standpoint, they may be dope as fuck, but then when you get them to talk on the mic, they're like, you can see they're not comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not like, when they speak on the mic and they write, that's talking for them.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you get them in an interview, they're like, they're more reserved or introverts, shall I say. So you've had those. I've had, I've had the interviews that are super gangster. I've had interviews where it's like, it's not, I wouldn't say like, there's debating or even / kind of arguments, or I will say this, for those that tuned in, they know like me and my hype man would be clowning the shit out of each other half the show. That just came with the show. Like, we're getting drunk, just talking shit to each other mid-interview with somebody else, and they're just like looking at us, and we're being kind of serious, but we're clowning, but they're like, are these fools about the box? You know what I mean? So that was all part of it, but like, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. It was definitely a dope experience. And then obviously still being able to shine light on some of these people that I really believe have talent,
Yeah. So you said you did your last show some time ago, and you got the Greatest Hits album coming out now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Spanning.
we put out 2012 was the international project that I told you about with the 25 producers. Excuse me, 25 tracks from all those different countries. But last year I put out "Mark My Words," was my last album.
Yeah.
That was my last album that I put out. And you got to remember, this is pretty much, that was the longest hiatus I'd ever had between any of the releases besides the EP to the first album. And
Yeah.
the reason being was because, doing Realism, we put out, I have an artist in Santana Ana, a real dope artist named Message. During that time, we put out 2 of his albums. We put out a group out of West LA called Illicit Dialect. Who else did we put out? Other releases got put out within that time frame. You know what I mean? I may be missing a release, and then we also put out, I want to say, the Brainwash campaign by Phase Rock. So all those releases were all put out during that time frame when I didn't do any music. So I was kind of concentrating on, helping them put shit out, doing a little promo here and there, maybe shooting a video, and just, doing the label side of it. So when I came back 2019 with Mark My Words, it was like, I'm back, motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't gone anywhere. Like, I'm back. And then, this album was really just kind of where I'm at in my life. It was definitely more of a, all my albums have political elements. All my albums have street elements. They all have hip hop elements and life related elements. And Mark My Words was just one of those just fuck, another classic Krazy Race record of mine. And now we're back. 2020. So what I did was, first album dropped 04, 6th album dropped 2019. That's a 15-year period. So I said, fuck it, it's time to do the greatest hits. So yeah, I've been putting out the call, to my supporters. We're about halfway in on pre-orders sold already. I'm only doing 100 vinyl, so it's gonna sell out. And this is the thing. This is my first official vinyl, brother, because vinyl's expensive, homie, and it always has been from a label standpoint. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so this will be my first official vinyl CD. That's gonna come out. The CDs drops around July 31st into July, and then the vinyl, even though the pre-orders are going out now, it's probably gonna sell out probably by the end of August. I would say if not the second week of August, I'm sure it's gonna sell out. But that one is it takes 8-9 weeks to press vinyl, so that's not gonna come ship probably till late September, early October is when it'll finally hit the streets, and I'll give it to the people that pre-ordered it. But I will say this, that's currently what's happening now, but with all the stuff that's been going on with, George Floyd and the protest and, and the virus and just all this shit's been going on. One thing about me is I've always had socially conscious topics in my music. I've always had what you would consider political stuff in my music, like Brown Beret related and stuff like that. So what I also did was June 15th, I put out a digital release only on my Bandcamp, and then now it's on Spotify and Apple Music and all that other shit. I put out what's called the Music with the Message Volume 1. And what that is socially conscious, political, and revolutionary records that I've done across these 6 albums. Plus other songs that I've done for other people's albums with features. So there's 7 song EPs. Basically 8 songs is technically an album. That's what they say. So I just did 7 songs. The first one dropped. That's on my Bandcamp. And then I just dropped volume 2. I want to say June 26th, something like that. So that's already 14 records that are out. And then right now, next week, I'm working on dropping volume 3.
Damn. So
those are all, but once again, those are all digital releases only. So you can find them right now, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, and then my Bandcamp. But what I've been doing is when I've been putting those out is the first week, I leave it up for free. So as many people get it within that first week or up to 100 downloads, and then I cap it off and then I put it up for sale. So at least people can get it. So volume 3, and then right now, I'm working on my new album. When I put out Mark My Words, I already had about 3 or 4 songs that got held back that were going to go on that album that I held back for this new album. The new album's entitled slate to drop later this year, November, December. But realistically, just because 2020 has been a fucked up year, like for real, like energy wise, you know what I mean? Just, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like maybe it should come out 2021. Excuse me.
I wonder.
Start the year off right.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask.
That was me talking about 2020. Made me fucking choke, homie.
I wanted to ask about that Mark My Words album because I don't know if I recall correctly, but you announced it like way before, right? Or am I tripping? Because I remember.
No, you're absolutely right, brother. I announced that thing. I want to say I had that name title under the buckle or under the belt for like shit. I want to say 3-4 years.
Yeah, and
there was a title for it, but I don't think I really started working on it until I built the studio. So I want to say 2019. I want to say around 2017 is when I really started, started off slowly with the recording and writing songs for it.
So what I wanted to ask when it comes to the recording process and the building a project process, because that one took a little longer than the other releases, were there anything like that you started in the beginning that you end up using, or did it kind of start over a few times where it's like, now we're not going to use any of these tracks, or how did you go about building that project?
That's a good question. I think, what's a trip is across all my albums, 99% of what I write gets put on the album. That's just kind of how I've worked. I've never really been one to be like, nah, I'm gonna scratch it, or I'm gonna re-record that, or I'm gonna hold that. Like when I did the Mark My Words album, because there was a period of time that it took to release. Because like I said, remember 2012 was the last album I dropped. So yeah, I want to say by 2014, 2015, I was probably already talking about maybe a little bit later, but I was already talking about this album. But even though maybe 2 years later, I really didn't start really working on it. But when I did record, I recorded a lot of music. Mm-hmm. I wrote a lot of songs. So I want to say, like, even though I may have already said 3 or 4, like realistically, I probably have probably about 5 to 7 songs that didn't get used that I could have used for the Mark My Words album. But it's just something inside me when I was doing the track listing for the Mark My Words, I was like, because it follows a certain cadence, you know what I mean? Like I said, like there's political, the street, there's life, there's, you know what I mean? There's boom bap, like underground, like all those kind of have to fit the record. Like I don't just, that's what was so different about me doing the Music with the Message Volume 1 and 2 is it was kind of one of the first times that I just took a subgenre of music and put them under one release. You feel me? Yeah. And so the Mark My Words with this one, I'm like, let me hold these back. And now that I listen to some of the records I held back, I'm glad I did because they're fucking fire. So this new album is gonna come out blazing already, you know. But to go back with the start of it, one of the first songs I recorded was a song called "Hopeless" with the homeboy Mr. Gremlin. He did the hook on it, and it's a trip because that started off the vibe of the album, and it was real, like just like the song's called "Hopeless." Like it was real, like it was kind of down, like it was, you know what I mean? It was not a sob story, but you know what I mean? It was a relatable one where people are going through some shit in life, like they can relate to. It was a struggle record, like, you know what I mean? It was a hard hitter. But when it came down to it, like we recorded the rough, but then I didn't use it. So then the next album that I started working on was called Mark My Words. So I already knew it was going to have like a real heavy life feel, like introspective of like what I was going through and just life and all that. But the next song I did was called Bars Over Bullshit. And it was a real heavy, like in your fucking face, I'm talking shit, like record. Yeah. And that was the first song that I ended up I'm like, this is where the record's gonna go now. And so I ended up keeping that. The funny shit about it, make a long story short, is that song ended up being the bonus track on the album. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's one of the bonus records. Like it didn't even make the real cut, it made the bonus. So I was all over this place with this album, but as long as it kind of fits the track listing and the feel of what I'm going for on the release, you know, then that's it. Like another thing, like there was no song on the album called Mark My Words. You know, my name is Mark. That's my government name. You know, I go by Krazy Race, so I was like, Mark My Words. It sounds dope. Like, fuck it, let's run with it. You know? Yeah, yeah.
And so like you said, you got a lot of like political heavy topics, who were your influences when it came to like molding your like worldview? When it even when it comes to writing like political type tracks, who were the influences you had, or what were they, books, or how did you go about like
Yeah,
forming
no,
those?
that's a great question, brother. Like, obviously books, heavy on books, heavy on documentaries. There was a radio show called Divine Forces Radio with Fidel Rodriguez. Before that, it was Seditious Beats. Like, so he would bring on, what I'm saying, heavy hitter guests. There's a 90.7 FM, which is now the home to Break Beats and Rhymes, which is one of the real, true hip-hop radio shows still left on the FM dial, but they're only on 1 day a week on Saturdays. That network is called the Pacifica Network, so it's called 90.7 FM. So I would get my dose there, you know what I mean? Because it's alternative medicine. Like, they're not telling you what Fox News is telling you. They're not telling you what ABC is telling you.
Like Amy Goodman and
exactly. Yeah, Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. Like, I think she was syndicated on that show. So it was a bit of all that. But like growing up, it really was me leaving LA when my pops gave me that story about, son, your world's is big. Like, that's really what got me into going to the library and just picking up, picking up different books, you know what I mean, and reading Behold a Pale Horse and Popol Vuh and just different books across different, like, whether it was New Age or, or what you consider political, or like if it was something about the Black Panther Party or the Brown Berets. Like, I was heavy into Corky Gonzalez and what he did in the Chicano movement. Of course, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, all that, Bob Marley. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I took a little bit of all of it and just really wrote about it. And I just felt it was important to write about it and kind of and document, our story, you know what I mean? And keep the flame alive for the next generation. And it's dope, like, just to see, like, taking my son to the last protest. Like, I'm not gonna front, I haven't really been frontline heavy with all these protests and everything that's been going on lately, because due to the virus and just kind of trying to do my part. And I really haven't been going out. So this the last one they did the Unity March for Vanessa Guillen and Andres Guardado and the street vendors and everything that's been happening and just police brutality. So I was like, yo, it's time for me to get out. So me and my son went masked up, but it was dope to be able to, because he's been out there before, because I used to do all the May Day rallies and South Central Farms and stuff like that. But it was good for him to see, like, this is what happens when our gente come together, you know what I mean, to peacefully protest and let our voices be heard, you know what I'm saying? So it was good for him to experience it. And, without me taking words out of his mouth, like he put, like, on his story on Instagram, like, it wasn't that big of a unity march, he said, but it was beautiful and it was powerful. And this is from a 16-year-old kid. So that was dope, you know what I'm saying, to be able to see that for my son, man. And, I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to say, like, there was a time in my life where I consider myself, I'm revolutionary, but I'm really not all that revolutionary. I would say I'm more of a social or community activist than I am a revolutionary. You feel me? Because a revolutionary is really putting himself on the front line and really out there doing the damn thing. You feel me? And I'm not talking about just putting up your fist on me. But if you were to ask that question, what is a revolutionary, to 30 different people, you may get 30 different responses. Yeah. So they may say, you know what he is doing is revolutionary. It's just not frontline revolutionary. It's just not, you know what I mean? By him putting out that kind of music and enlightening and awakening others, they could spark the next Chad. They could spark, you know what I mean? Who knows? The articles are.
I think I can say that I think that you did that was, very revolutionary from a music point of view. Was I always identified as an indigenous man, right? And I never heard anyone really say it in music until I started hearing your music. I was like, really? Oh shit, yeah. So like, you hear people call themselves Chicanos or Latinos or Hispanics or whatever, you know what I mean? But I never really heard anyone like use the term indigenous in their music until I picked up one of your tracks. What was it that made you, you know what I mean, identify as an indigenous man, and how important was it for you to do so?
Just having native blood, brother. You know what I mean? My great grandmother is from Mazatlan. my family are really from the States, from Texas, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So definitely we pick up the Chicano moniker, but because we do have a Spanish surname, like it's hard for me to say I'm not Spanish because my surname is Spanish, man. We got conquered, you know what I mean? But I still have a Spanish, so there's still Spanish blood in me. When I say indígena, like I'm a Chicano. That's what I identify now with most by who I am. But like I'm a mutt, really, brother. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of us are. But to answer your questions on the indigenous side and what made me relate to it and why I wanted to talk about it was because when I did find out of, you know what I mean, on my grandfather's side, just the native roots that I did have and what tribe that we were from. You know what I'm saying? So once I did that, I was like, yo, I'm gonna put this in. I'm gonna put this in records. I'm gonna put that I'm Chicano on records. But it wasn't until 2012 when I wrote Bloodline when I said it. I still got to put this out there. I even said it in the song, like it's hard for me to say I'm pure this and pure that because that can't be actual fact. If I'm carrying a Spanish surname, like my last name is Ramirez, you know what I mean? Like so it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's kind of a catch-22, like, and it's a touchy subject, but I've never really identified with Hispanic. You know, I saw your piece on the word Latino. I think if anything, I can relate and hear what you're saying because we're not technically from Latin America on the Latino side. But if anything, I probably identify more with a Chicano, Mexican American because I am American. You know what I'm saying? Obviously by birthright. And then I still identify with Latino. Like I don't get pissed when someone says, "Oh, you're Latino hip hop or you're Latin." Like I don't trip on that. But if you're gonna call me Hispanic, I'm not Hispanic. I'm not a Spaniard. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's just what it is.
Yeah, hell yeah. And so you got a lot of projects going on now. And what do you think is the future? Because I know like a lot of shit's changing right now as we speak. You know what I mean? There hasn't really been hip hop shows. What do you mean? You've been around for a long time. You survived a lot of different changes. What do you think is the future of hip hop right now? Like, especially in the underground scene. You know what I mean? I know you're above the underground scene, but for cats coming up, like, what do you think is the future for them? Because I know there's really ain't gonna be spots like they had before. You know what I mean? Like the urban underground and all that. Like all that's gone.
As far as you're mentioning the different venues and whatnot, like and that's a valid point too, because it's something I think a lot of artists are right now getting used to. I know they just did what's it called? Oh, I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue. They used to do it at MacArthur Park. Radiotron, excuse me. They just did Radiotron was something that was big, happened within the underground scene for years. MacArthur Park. They just did that at the Vortex, and they kind of followed the social distancing guideline. My boy Rabito from B-Side was hosting it along with others, but like it was a trip to see because they still did the show. I want to say there was about 8 to 10 groups, but like you could see because it was a live stream. There was no fans that or no supporters that got to go and turn out to the event. It was just the artists and the DJs that were there with the organizers. They were still wearing masks when they weren't, you know what I mean? The majority of them were at least. And it was social distancing, but it was a trip to see, like, it was still dope to see the live element of it. But it's just like, man, like, I miss the days of, cracking a brew and shooting the shit, puffing a J next to my homie and catching the vibes and just vibing out to, like, a really dope underground, hip-hop show. And going forward with all that's going down right now, like, man, I don't know. Like, you see a lot of entertainers and artists in general, even big ones like Pearl Jam and other, like, they're doing like live stream, live event concerts, but a lot of these have been more benefits for like frontline nurses or different things like that. A lot of them have had causes, you know what I'm saying? So it's dope because some of these productions are done, you can see they're done pretty well. Like they're getting budget behind them to do it. But from the underground standpoint, man, I don't know. I think realistically, you're going to see more platforms and more artists themselves really just going live and doing shows, not only because they want to do it for the love of it, but hopefully like people will hit their Venmo, their Cash App and chip off of them something, because you got to remember a lot of these artists, well, this is how they make their income by not being able to travel, by not being able to do shows. It affects, you know what I mean? Like, luckily, I think for me, and not to say that it's been all that well, even though the greatest hits, the people have been behind it and supporting it, but like even my merch, like this is an Ill Kid shirt, but even like my streetwear that I do, like for artists like me, that's a benefit because at least I already had the website intact to where you can go buy merch, go buy music. But for those artists that don't, like that's an avenue you kind of need to take, because if you're not out there, if you don't have a storefront, if you know what I mean, if mom and pop shops are really not selling your music, like this is the avenue you got to take now. You got to sell it online. You got to be able to market and put yourself in front of these people and hope that, you know, that they're going to turn around and support you and cop something, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And before we wrap it up, is there anything else you wanted to say?
I don't know, bro. We definitely covered a lot. You know, I think if anything, just keep doing what you're doing, brother. Like, you know what I'm saying? I've been seeing the interviews. I didn't know which way we were going to take it, you know, because the story goes deep, you know. We obviously kept it, you know, more music related. So just definitely want to shout out, you know, the people that have supported me, you know what I'm saying, over this 20 plus career, you know, artists, producers, you know, graphic designers, you know, I mean, the videographers, everybody that fucks with me, within the network, the Realism camp, you know what I'm saying, the label side of things, you know what I mean, my family, big shout out to my son Dominic, and just, you know, everybody that's going through it right now, man. I know this shit has not been easy, you know what I mean, this quarantine status, you know, I can't say that I haven't got out, like besides I told you about me going to the march. Like I know during my birthday I said fuck it, I'm going to Vegas, went to Laughlin, masked up and had a good time, but besides that, you know what I mean, big ups to everybody out there that, you know, that's doing their part, you know, making their voice heard with, you know, with these issues that really have substance and need to be heard, you know, and to all the frontliners, like I'm talking about, not only the nurses, but, you know, the cafeteria workers that are still making, you know, the lunches for the kids to come pick up for their families, anybody who's frontline that's helping the community, man, you know what I'm saying, big ups to you for, you know what I'm saying, for doing that. But like I said, man, keep up the good content. I do have a new album coming soon. If you're a fan of any of my music, or if you haven't heard my music, you can check me out. Krazy Race 1, the numeral side 1, Krazy Race 1.wordpress.com. And then you can find the merch at realism.bigcartel.com. Pretty much all the majority of my social media is Krazy Race. On YouTube, you can find us at Realism Records. It's Realism with the Z, Records with the K, REKORDS. And that's about it, man. That's about it from my end, man.
We're going to drop the links in the description below. So anyone wants to check it out, all you got to do is just click and you'll see it. You mean you'll see it. Believe me, like this guy's, if you don't know this guy, he's a dope ass artist, for real. Like he's
appreciate that, brother.
He's spitting facts, and it's the way hip hop should be. So I appreciate you taking the time to chop it up with us, G.
No doubt, man. Hey, like I said, man, definitely keep it up. You know what I mean? I've been catching some of the interviews you've been doing, man. Dope stuff. I actually last night I heard the one you did with Rumble. You know what I'm saying? With your boy Rumble. Yeah, that was real dope. I caught the one you did with your homie Joker. Like I've heard the one you did on, you know what I'm saying, when you're speaking about, you know, the Latino word and all that. So, you know what I mean? I love the content. You know, and I see how you're doing it, and how your channel itself, like from when you started to where you're at now, is definitely growing, brother. So big ups to you, man. Saludos. Big ups to all my gente out there, all the raza. Stay up. You know what I mean? You know what it is. Raza Loca, Krazy Race. I'm out, man. Peace.
We're out. Peace.
All right, Doc.
I've been known to walk with that strut. I've been known to put my fist up. I've been known to have some good times with the smile on my face, with the pains inside. I've been known as the voice of my roots. I've been known as the messenger of truth. I've been known as an underground legend. They call me Krazy Race, I'll always be your brethren. I've been known to walk with that strut. I've been known to put my fist up. I've been known to have some good times with the smile on my face, with the pain pains inside. I've been known as the voice for my roots. I've been known as a messenger of truth. I've been known as an underground legend. They call me Krazy Race, I'll always be your bridge. You can walk in my shoes and still not understand, not even comprehend my gift to write with the pen. 3 decades of living in a world that's unforgiving. Been called to the cause, won't stop until we're winning. My life's been a journey of struggle and pain. I've been through the storm, lightning, thunder, and rain. Been known to be a sinner, not known to be a saint. Been known to go to county for hitting walls with paint. As I look back now, wondering where the time go. I still remember being in class when time went slow. Been through many walks and different phases of life. Been known to do some things that just weren't right. The choices we make and the actions we take. I'm a believer in karma, it's coming back my way. Between the positive and negative, I'm trying to find a balance. I'll always be known to take on any challenge. I've been known to walk with that strut. I've been known to put my fist up. I've been known to have some good times with a smile on my face, with the pains inside. I've been known as the voice of my roots. I've been known as the messenger of truth. I've been known as an underground legend. They call me Krazy Race, I'll always be your brethren. I've been known to walk with that strut. I've been known to put my fist up. I've been known to have some good times with a smile on my face, with the pains inside. I've been known as the voice of my roots. I've been known as a messenger of truth. I've been known as an underground legend. They call me Krazy Race, I'll always be your brethren. Done shit in the past to hurt my moms and pops. Been known to do some things to make my heartbeat stop. Times have changed, now I grind for my little man. Always been dedicated, always took a stand. Rest in peace to my fam and friends who passed before me. Been known to tell my people's real history and story. Speak the words of truth, they're most shot from. The system trying to keep us blind, deaf and dumb. Throughout the USA and everybody over ghetto. The streets are waking up, my words bass and treble. Time is now, people, the time is here. The voices of the streets are finally here. Between the alcohol, drugs, and disrespect, this is my way of redemption, to reconnect and redirect my purpose in life. I've been known for many things, one is killing a mic. I've been known to walk with that strut. I've been known to put my fist up. I've been known to have some good times with a smile on my face, with the pains inside. I've been known as the voice for my roots. I've been known as the messenger of truth. I've been known as an underground legend. They call me Krazy Race, I'll always be your brethren. I've been known to walk with that strut. I've been known to put my fist up. I've been known to have some good times with a smile on my face, with the pains inside. I've been known as the voice for my roots. I've been known as a messenger of truth. I've been known as an underground legend. They call me Krazy Race, I'll always be your brethren.